After 65, the body begins to listen more carefully to the signals it receives, especially in the quiet hours of the morning, when biology is most receptive and the nervous system is still deciding how the day will unfold. Morning habits are not just routines anymore. They become messages sent directly to cells, hormones, blood vessels, and the brain, quietly shaping how long the body can sustain balance and vitality. When you wake, your internal systems are recalibrating after sleep. Cortisol is naturally rising, blood pressure is adjusting, and blood sugar is stabilizing. What you do in this window matters more than most people realize, because the body interprets these actions as instructions about whether it is safe to repair, adapt, and preserve energy for the long term. A gentle, intentional morning tells the body that survival is not urgent, that resources can be allocated toward maintenance instead of defense. This is especially important after 65, when the body becomes more conservative with energy and more sensitive to stress. Rushing, skipping movement, or flooding the system with stress early in the day sends a very different message, one that encourages inflammation, muscle breakdown, and metabolic strain. Over time, these repeated signals accumulate, shaping the trajectory of aging, not through dramatic events, but through quiet daily reinforcement. Scientific research increasingly shows that circadian rhythms govern far more than sleep. They influence immune response, cardiovascular function, insulin sensitivity, and even how efficiently cells repair DNA damage. Morning behaviors help anchor these rhythms. Light exposure, posture, breathing, hydration, and movement all serve as timing cues that synchronize internal clocks throughout the body. After 65, when these clocks naturally drift, consistent morning signals help restore coherence, allowing organs to work together instead of competing for limited resources. There is also a psychological dimension that directly feeds biology. A calm morning reduces the brain's perception of threat, lowering stress hormones that otherwise accelerate cellular aging. When stress hormones remain elevated, blood vessels stiffen, inflammation rises, and tissues recover more slowly. A thoughtful morning interrupts this cycle before it gains momentum. Even small acts, such as standing upright, breathing deeply, or moving joints through a comfortable range, tell the nervous system that the body is still capable, still adaptable, still worth maintaining. Longevity is rarely extended by force or intensity, especially later in life. It is extended by cooperation. Morning habits after 65 become a daily negotiation between the body and time, offering reassurance rather than resistance. Each morning is a chance to say to the body that it is supported, not rushed, and that it has permission to invest in repair rather than merely endurance. Over months and years, these signals compound, shaping not only how long life lasts, but how steady and meaningful those added years can feel. Aging is often described as something that suddenly happens to us, but in reality, it unfolds slowly through small shifts in how the body's systems communicate with one another. After 65, this process becomes more noticeable, not because the body is failing, but because its margins grow narrower. Muscles lose efficiency, blood vessels become less elastic, and the brain takes longer to recover from stress. Yet beneath these changes lies an important truth supported by biology. The body remains remarkably responsive when it receives gentle, consistent cues. Aging is not a shutdown, it is a recalibration. Every system in the body is designed to adapt, even later in life. Cells respond to movement by improving glucose uptake. Blood vessels respond to regular stimulation by preserving flexibility. The brain responds to predictable rhythms by strengthening neural pathways that support memory and focus. What changes with age is not the ability to respond, but the threshold at which the body feels overwhelmed. Harsh or irregular demands create confusion and strain, while steady and compassionate input restores order. Scientific studies on aging repeatedly show that consistency matters more than intensity. A small daily action performed at the same time sends a clearer signal to the nervous system than sporadic bursts of effort. This is because the brain prioritizes patterns when deciding which systems to maintain. When movement, hydration, or mental engagement becomes predictable, the body treats them as essential functions rather than optional behaviors. Over time, this stabilizes metabolism, reduces inflammatory markers, and preserves functional independence. System drift is one of the most overlooked aspects of aging. As internal clocks lose synchronization, organs begin operating slightly out of phase with one another. Blood sugar may rise before muscles are ready to use it. Blood pressure may spike before vessels have warmed. The brain may remain in a state of vigilance long after danger has passed. Gentle daily cues help realign these systems, nudging them back into cooperation rather than conflict. The beauty of this responsiveness is that it does not demand perfection. The body is not asking for radical change, it is asking for clarity. When signals are simple, repeated, and calm, repair becomes more efficient. Mitochondria, the energy centers of cells, respond by producing energy with less waste. Immune cells shift away from constant alert toward targeted defense. Even joint tissues regain lubrication when movement becomes predictable. This adaptability carries a deeper implication for aging. It means decline is not a straight line. The trajectory can flatten, stabilize, and even improve when the body feels understood rather than pushed. Aging, then, becomes less about loss and more about refinement. The body sheds excess, conserves wisely, and responds generously to kindness. In this way, gentle consistency becomes a form of communication, reminding the body each day that it is still capable of balance, resilience, and quiet strength.
Movement early in the day carries a significance that goes far beyond muscle strength or flexibility, especially after 65, when circulation and brain health become deeply intertwined. When the body transitions from rest to activity, blood flow redistributes, oxygen delivery improves, and the brain receives a clear signal that the day has begun. This simple shift can slow both physical and cognitive decline by reinforcing pathways that keep systems connected and responsive. The body is designed to move, and when it does so gently but intentionally in the morning, it remembers how to support itself. Circulation is not only about the heart pushing blood forward, it depends on muscles acting as secondary pumps, particularly in the legs. After periods of inactivity, blood can pool in the lower body, reducing oxygen supply and increasing stiffness. Morning movement activates these muscular pumps, helping blood return efficiently to the heart and brain. This improves balance, reduces dizziness, and lowers the risk of falls, which are often a consequence of poor circulation rather than weakness alone. The brain benefits immediately from this increased blood flow. Neurons rely on a steady supply of oxygen and glucose, and even mild improvements in circulation can sharpen attention and stabilize mood. Morning movement stimulates the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factors, proteins that support neuron survival and communication. Over time, this helps preserve memory and processing speed, not by pushing the brain harder, but by nourishing it more effectively. There is also a protective effect on the nervous system. Gentle, early movement reduces morning stiffness in the spine and joints, allowing nerves to transmit signals with less resistance. This improves coordination and reaction time, both of which tend to decline when the body remains sedentary for too long. The brain interprets movement as a sign of capability, reinforcing confidence and reducing the fear-based responses that often limit mobility in older adults. Importantly, morning movement does not need to be intense to be effective. The body responds best to smooth, controlled actions that respect its current limits. Sudden exertion can elevate stress hormones and counteract the benefits, while calm motion lowers blood pressure and improves vascular function. This balance encourages blood vessels to remain flexible, reducing strain on the heart and supporting long-term cardiovascular health. Cognitive decline is rarely caused by a single factor. It emerges from reduced circulation, chronic inflammation, and diminished sensory input. Morning movement addresses all three at once. It increases blood flow, dampens inflammatory signals, and engages the senses in a way that reaffirms spatial awareness. Over months and years, this daily reinforcement helps maintain the brain's map of the body, preserving independence and clarity. When movement becomes a morning ritual, it shifts from being an effort to being an identity. The body begins to expect motion as part of waking and prepares for it in advance. Muscles warm more quickly, balance improves sooner, and the brain transitions into alertness with less resistance. In this way, early day movement becomes a quiet promise between body and mind, one that supports longevity not through force, but through faithful repetition. The way a morning begins sets the emotional and biochemical tone for the entire day, and after 65, this influence becomes even more pronounced. Stress is no longer just a mental state, it becomes a physiological load that the body struggles to carry. When mornings are rushed or filled with tension, stress hormones surge before the body has fully awakened, creating inflammation that quietly accelerates aging at the cellular level. A calm, intentional morning interrupts this cascade before it takes hold, allowing the body to shift into a state of repair rather than defense. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, follows a natural rhythm meant to support alertness and energy. In a healthy pattern, it rises gently in the morning and gradually falls throughout the day. Chronic stress disrupts this rhythm, keeping cortisol elevated and forcing the body to sacrifice long-term maintenance for short-term survival. After 65, the cost of this disruption increases. Elevated cortisol weakens memory formation, impairs muscle breakdown, and damages the delicate lining of blood vessels, contributing to stiffness and cardiovascular strain. A calm morning helps restore balance, signaling that the environment is safe enough for healing to occur. Inflammation is one of the hidden drivers of aging. It does not always present as pain or illness, but it quietly interferes with how cells communicate and regenerate. Stress amplifies inflammation by activating immune pathways designed for emergencies. When these pathways remain active, tissues age faster and recovery slows. A calm morning reduces this immune overreaction, lowering inflammatory markers and preserving cellular integrity. Even simple practices like slow breathing or unhurried movement can influence this process, demonstrating how closely the nervous system and immune system are connected. Cellular aging is often discussed in abstract terms, but it reflects very real biological wear. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, shorten more rapidly under chronic stress. Mitochondria, responsible for producing energy, become less efficient when stress hormones dominate the environment. By starting the day calmly, the body conserves energy and directs resources toward maintenance rather than damage control. The mind plays a crucial role in shaping these biological outcomes. A calm morning fosters a sense of control and presence, lowering the brain's tendency to anticipate threats. This directly influences the autonomic nervous system, encouraging parasympathetic activity associated with rest and recovery. Heart rate stabilizes, blood pressure moderates, and breathing becomes deeper and more efficient. These changes may appear subtle in the moment, but their long-term impact compounds over time. When mornings are approached with patience rather than urgency, the body learns that it does not need to brace itself against the day. Compassion towards oneself becomes a biological strategy, not a sentimental gesture.
Each calm morning reinforces a message of safety and cooperation, allowing aging to unfold with less resistance and more harmony, shaping a future defined not by decline, but by sustained balance and quiet resilience. The way a morning begins quietly shapes the biological direction of the entire day, especially after 65, when the body's tolerance for stress becomes more limited and more consequential. Stress is no longer just an emotional experience, it becomes a chemical signal that influences inflammation, immunity, and cellular aging. When mornings are rushed or tense, the nervous system interprets this as a state of threat before the body has fully awakened. Stress hormones rise sharply, blood vessels tighten, and inflammatory pathways activate, placing the body into a defensive mode that was never meant to last for hours at a time. Cortisol, often misunderstood as harmful, is actually essential when it follows its natural rhythm. In healthy aging, cortisol rises gently in the early morning to support alertness, blood sugar regulation, and blood pressure balance. When this rise is exaggerated by anxiety or urgency, it disrupts the entire hormonal cascade that follows. After 65, this disruption carries a heavier cost. Prolonged cortisol exposure weakens memory formation, accelerates muscle breakdown, and damages the delicate lining of blood vessels, contributing to stiffness and cardiovascular strain. A calm morning helps restore balance, signaling that the environment is safe enough for healing to occur. Inflammation is one of the hidden drivers of aging. It does not always present as pain or illness, but it quietly interferes with how cells communicate and regenerate. Stress amplifies inflammation by activating immune pathways designed for emergencies. When these pathways remain active, tissues age faster and recovery slows. A calm morning reduces this immune overreaction, lowering inflammatory markers and preserving cellular integrity. Even simple practices like slow breathing or unhurried movement can influence this process, demonstrating how closely the nervous system and immune system are connected. Cellular aging is often discussed in abstract terms, but it reflects very real biological wear. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, shorten more rapidly under chronic stress. Mitochondria, responsible for producing energy, become less efficient when stress hormones dominate the environment. By starting the day calmly, the body conserves energy and directs resources toward maintenance rather than damage control. The mind plays a crucial role in shaping these biological outcomes. A calm morning fosters a sense of control and presence, lowering the brain's tendency to anticipate threats. This directly influences the autonomic nervous system, encouraging parasympathetic activity associated with rest and recovery. Heart rate stabilizes, blood pressure moderates, and breathing becomes deeper and more.
Longevity after 65 is rarely the result of fighting the body into submission, and far more often the outcome of learning how to listen to it with respect. As the years pass, the body changes its language. Signals become softer, recovery takes longer, and tolerance for excess diminishes. When these changes are ignored, aging feels like a struggle. When they are acknowledged, the body responds with surprising generosity. Cooperating with the body's evolving needs allows its systems to work together rather than compete, conserving energy for what truly sustains life. Aging alters how the body prioritizes resources. Muscle, immune function, and brain health all draw from the same limited reserves. When demands are excessive or poorly timed, the body compensates by sacrificing repair. This is why pushing harder often leads to faster decline rather than resilience. Cooperation means aligning habits with how the body now processes stress, movement, and rest. It involves choosing consistency over intensity and timing over force, allowing biological systems to adapt without becoming overwhelmed. Scientific observations of long-lived populations reveal a common pattern. They rarely engage in extremes. Their routines are steady, predictable, and respectful of natural rhythms.
The nervous system thrives on this predictability, using it to reduce background stress and preserve cognitive clarity. When the body knows what to expect, it spends less energy scanning for danger and more energy maintaining tissues, balancing hormones, and supporting immune surveillance. Cooperation also means accepting that recovery is not a weakness, but a requirement. Sleep, stillness, and gentle activity are no longer optional pauses. They are active components of health. When rest is honored, inflammation subsides, and neural networks consolidate memory and learning. When movement is approached with awareness rather than ambition, joints remain lubricated and muscles preserve function without injury. Each choice reinforces the body's confidence in its environment. There is a psychological shift that accompanies this cooperation. The fear of aging often leads people to resist change, clinging to habits that no longer serve them. Letting go of this resistance reduces mental stress, which directly influences physical health. The brain interprets acceptance as safety, calming stress pathways that otherwise accelerate aging. This mental alignment supports emotional resilience, reducing anxiety and improving overall well-being. Longevity, in this sense, becomes less about adding years and more about sustaining quality. The body is not trying to reverse time, it is trying to remain balanced within it. When habits reflect understanding rather than defiance, biological systems synchronize more effectively. Blood pressure stabilizes, digestion improves, and immune responses become more targeted. Aging transforms from an adversary into a process of refinement, where excess is shed and essentials are preserved. By cooperating with the body, individuals honor its wisdom accumulated over decades. Each day becomes an opportunity to reinforce trust between mind and physiology. This trust allows aging to proceed with less friction, preserving dignity, clarity, and strength in ways that feel natural rather than forced, supporting a longer life shaped by harmony instead of resistance. Every morning after 65 arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, yet inside the body a profound conversation is already underway. Cells are asking whether today will be a day of renewal or slow surrender. Longevity is rarely decided by dramatic medical breakthroughs. More often, it is shaped by what we choose to do in the first moments after waking. Science shows us that the morning is not just the start of a day, but a powerful biological signal that tells the body how long it should plan to last. When we understand this, morning habits become less about routine and more about a quiet agreement with life itself. As the body ages, its systems do not fail all at once. They drift. Blood vessels stiffen slightly, muscles forget their strength, hormones lose their rhythm, and cells grow less efficient at repairing damage. Yet biology also reveals something hopeful. Aging systems remain remarkably responsive to gentle, consistent signals. Movement, hydration, light exposure, and mental focus in the morning act like tuning forks, reminding the nervous system, metabolism, and immune response how they are meant to function. The body listens closely during this window, especially after 65. One of the most overlooked truths in longevity science is that the body thrives on predictability paired with mild challenge. Morning practices that awaken circulation, engage muscles, and stimulate balance do more than improve strength. They protect the brain. Research into neuroplasticity shows that physical movement early in the day increases blood flow to regions responsible for memory and coordination, slowing cognitive decline. These effects are not dramatic in a single day, but over years they quietly stack, much like interest in a long-term investment. Equally important is how the mind enters the day. Chronic stress accelerates aging at the cellular level, shortening telomeres and increasing inflammation. The morning offers a rare opportunity to set emotional tone before the world imposes its demands. Slow breathing, intentional stillness, or even simple awareness of posture and breath can reduce stress hormones and improve insulin sensitivity. The body interprets calm as safety, and in safety, repair becomes possible. Perhaps the most humbling realization from longevity research is that living longer is not about forcing youth to return. It is about cooperating with the body's changing needs. Morning habits after 65 are acts of respect toward a system that has carried us for decades. When we move gently but consistently, nourish thoughtfully, and begin the day with clarity rather than urgency, we are not chasing extra years. We are creating conditions where life feels willing to stay.